What is going on, YouTube? So coming back with my Kansas State football preview. And my prediction for the Big 12 dark horse, if you went and saw my Big 12 conference preview and predictions, I had Kansas State finishing 5th and as my dark horse. Now, one thing that I'm going to discuss a little bit further in the video is I really don't know how Baylor's going to turn out this year. They could still be the same team, or they could be an absolute train wreck. No one really knows, and I think Kansas State will be the immediate benefactor if Baylor is, in fact, actually a train wreck this year. So, go ahead and start with the first of my 3 key players, and to start, I've got Deontay Burton. Kansas State, I think, has 2 very good quarterbacks coming back. Jesus Christ, I can't get this right. 2 very good wide receivers coming back this year, and Deontay Burton, I personally think, is the better of them. Now, my personal opinion of Kansas State's offense is that they will need a running back this year. I think the passing game will actually be extremely solid this year. I'll get more into that with my 3rd key player later. But I really think that this wide receiving core will be very good. I mentioned Deontay Burton. Dominique Heath, I think, will be very good as well. And then Byron Pringle, a JUCO transfer coming in, and should be a great playmaker for Kansas State this year. So my 2nd key player is Carmichael Moore, a guy who might even be a first-round pick this year. Him and Elijah Lee are 2 guys that really can lead this Kansas State defense in the right direction. In my opinion, Kansas State's defense will be the best that they've seen in a couple years. That's not just my opinion, that's kind of a general consensus. They struggled pretty mightily against the pass last year. They were okay against the run, though. The defense was very up and down, very inconsistent in 2015, so hopefully you see an improvement in 2016. Now, my 3rd key player for Kansas State is Jesse Ertz. The presumed starting quarterback it is, but really between 3 or 4 guys. Alex Delton, who I think could step up and end up taking it at one point. I'd say if anyone's a threat to take over the starting job by the end of the year, it would be Delton. But they also have Joe Huebner and Cody Cook in that battle as well. I don't think Cody Cook's going to end up taking it, though. The guy kind of got thrown into quarterback when Jesse Ertz went down against, I can't remember if it was Jesse Ertz or Joe Huebner. It was one of the 2. Maybe both went down with injury against Oklahoma State. And then Cody Cook got thrown in. But anyway, like I said, I think that Kansas State's passing attack will be very good this year. I think they'll have a little bit more consistency. Bill Snyder tends to have a thing where quarterbacks become really good in their second years under him. Jake Waters I like to use as the prime example, and then obviously Colin Klein was a good example of that as well. So, get into my first X factor of my 2, and that is improvement against the pass. Just improvement in the secondary in general. I mentioned this earlier. They will be relying very heavily on 3 guys in the secondary this year: Donnie Starks, Caleb Pruitt, and Duke Shelley. Pretty young secondary. They most likely will be starting 2 freshmen, Kendall Adams and Duke Shelley, 1 safety and then 1 cornerback. I think that they will be better against the pass. They will need to be. This is going to be as good of a passing year as any in the Big 12. TCU making the transition to Kenny Hill, who's shown in the past that he can be a good passing quarterback. And then obviously the 3 at the top, when you're talking about Oklahoma State, OU, and Baylor, they will all have tremendous passing attacks, or at least are expected to be. You take Texas Tech, obviously, into account, always good with passing attack, and then West Virginia, bringing back Skylar Howard, should be good in the air as well. Now, move on to my 2nd key factor, and that is consistency at QB, and I think that's the biggest one for them. Now, like I said, I think Jesse Ertz will be the starter. I think he had the best season at quarterback of any Kansas State quarterback last year. I think each one of them really got a chance at some point. And, I don't really see anyone else besides Jesse Ertz or Alex Delton really having success at quarterback, and I think they need to find one consistent one. Obviously, pretty much any time you see a good quarterback situation, it's not a 2-quarterback system or switching in between quarterbacks. You see how that worked out for Ohio State last year. But also, they do have a lot of weapons returning at wide receiver. Dominique Heath, Deontay Burton, and Byron Pringle. I expect big things out of all of them. And one of the bigger questions is at running back for support. I assume they'll be fine. Charles Jones, most likely the starter, and then Dalvin Warmack should get some touches as well. But as long as this is a balanced, good offense, I can see Kansas State competing in the Big 12. Now, get into my trap game for Kansas State, and I think it's going to be West Virginia. Kansas State has kind of been in that group of Big 12 teams the last 2 years that kind of goes between, I'd say the 5 to the 8 spots have all been pretty tightly contested between Texas Tech, Kansas State, and West Virginia. Even Iowa State has competed at times. I mean, they shut out Texas last year and almost beat Oklahoma State. But I expect Kansas State to kind of be on the upper end of that list this year. I actually do expect them to top out on the top of that list this year. Let's see where I believe they finished tied for fifth. Oh no, they were 8th last year in the conference, 3-6. So, like I said, they're going to need to be able to get past a game like West Virginia, where in my personal opinion they will be favored, but it still will be a tough game nonetheless because I believe it is in Morgantown. Make sure that, yeah, it is in Morgantown, and it is their toughest conference game to start off the year. I mean, it is their first conference game. So anyway, move on to my biggest game for Kansas State, and there's a few games you could make an argument for, Stanford being one of them, Oklahoma State, TCU, OU all stand, but I do think it will be the TCU game. It's their final game of the season, and I think if Kansas State wants to crack their way into kind of the top 3 of the conference, then they're going to have to beat TCU. TCU right now is expected to be the 3rd best team in the conference, and obviously a win against OU or Oklahoma State or Baylor would help them out tremendously as well. But I think TCU is that key game to be able to get themselves inside the top 3 of the conference. So move on to my record prediction for Kansas State, and I think they will go 8-5. I think it'll be a better season this year than it was last year. Who knows if it's going to be Bill Snyder's last season? That's one of the bigger questions. I see wins against Florida Atlantic, Missouri State, West Virginia, Texas Tech, Texas, Iowa State, maybe Baylor, and then Kansas. And then I also expect a bowl win out of Kansas State. I think they'll do better in bowl season this year after getting thrashed by Arkansas last year. I expect a better bowl turnout of just the entire Big 12. But like I said, it should be an interesting season for Kansas State, whether or not Bill Snyder will be coming back. See if they can improve off their 6-6 season last year, finishing 8th in the conference. I expect better than that as well this year, and seeing if they can get a consistent passing attack and a better defense than they had last year. So that's pretty much it. See ya.